Hey, it is Any Old Gamer here today to share with you guys my Labyrinth auto teams for all of the Hell stages. Now, a couple of quick disclaimers, guys. First of all, most of these teams use Nat 5s or LD4s. I will discuss some Theorycraft options to replace them. I'm going to talk about kind of the roles that they serve in each team so you can see if you're able to find a monster in your box that can replace it. Now, if you don't have these exact teams, I have previously done a video with all of the levels for manual teams. I'm going to put an info card on screen right now, so you guys can check that video out if you don't have the monster box for the auto teams. Second disclaimer, obviously I am a late game player, an end game player really. I've got really good runes. However, most of these monsters are either runed for PvP, which is not ideal for PvE, or they're just on runes that are from like years ago. So I don't believe these teams require absolutely insane rune quality, but these teams may not work if you're early or early mid game. These are probably still going to require runes from like a later mid game player, but I guess your mileage may vary, right? Anyway, with that said, let's start off with a normal level. Alright guys, so this is my auto team for normal. Yeah, there's an LD4, an LD5, and 3 Nat 5s here. Do you need these monsters? No. Normal levels are generally pretty simple. Now, one thing about Labyrinth, when I try and make my teams that are going to auto, I try and make teams that will auto every level without me having to look at like what monsters are going to be there and so forth. So I'm going to run through the stats. There's actually no point in running through the Pontos stats probably. If you have Pontos, awesome. He's in a standard Pontos build. But Pontos is basically there for kind of really the cleansing, even more than the invincibility. So I think almost any cleanser would work in his place. Lulu would probably be fine, just like a normal 2A Lulu. So we'll do this run actually with a 2A Lulu in this spot. Just switch up the leader skill here. Now, Belinus is there just as my primary damage dealer, especially in the Pontos or Lulu versions. You don't have a lot of damage that's coming out other than the Poseidon. Belinus is also giving me defense break. If you lack the Belinus, and here are his stats, if you lack the Belinus, some alternatives for him are basically anything that CCs with high damage output. And then if you can't get the high damage output, just anything that CCs. So, monsters that can run in his place from the Nat 5s, you have Rika, you have Charlotte. From the Nat 4s, you can run Tyron. You could also probably run Chung as a Nat 5, so really just anything that CCs. The Bastet is here really just to give me that secondary defense breaker and then also some attack buff. Bastet would probably be replaceable with a Fran. Honestly, you lose that secondary defense break, but you gain more sustain. Iris is going to be in most of my teams, guys. I'm sorry for that, but she is an amazing PvE unit. Now, she's obviously runed for PvP right here. We'll talk about options to replace her as we get to each team. For this team right here, Iris is providing me some secondary sustain along with strip and some possible despair stuns. So I would look at, if you have a Chung, he would probably work really good in that spot, preferably on despair. If you don't have a Chung, I would look at something that provides strip in this spot, preferably a strip with additional debuffs. So like Verisa was Hall of Heroes 2 months ago, that's the Dark Chun-Li. She would probably work really well in this spot. You just want to make sure that you're not going to get caught up. Again, these are kind of like looking for all-purpose teams that can work in every level. So one thing you'll note is that I use a lot of attribute variety. I don't want to run 5 fire monsters because I'm going to get tripped up on a water level. So Verisa being an Light Dark, she's an LD4, but she's Hall of Heroes would be a good option there. I just showed the Poseidon stats. Poseidon's there just for damage and CC. We're going to go ahead and try this team with the Lulu just to make sure it works. I'll run this on fast forward and we'll move to the next stage. Now you guys may also have noticed that the Bastet shields were really helpful there. So if you try the Fran in this spot, and the thing is guys, I would test a lot of these different options, but there's so many moving parts to the teams, right? Like if you don't have Poseidon and I try testing it with the Charlotte, but maybe you have Bastet and then I test it with the Fran and I haven't actually tested your version of the team. So the goal of this video is to talk more about the concepts of the roles that each monster serves as opposed to kind of trying infinite variations of the team. I know that not all these teams are going to be, none of these teams are going to be free to play, but the reality is even free to play players have Nat 5s, and there are so many different variations that could be run of this team. It just wouldn't be possible for me to test them all. Anyway, with that said, you'll notice that the Bastet shields were really helpful for me on this level. So another option, if the Fran's not working for you, would be to try Wusa. You lose the attack buff, but you gain thicker shields, you gain more immunity, and then you gain more healing. If you don't have a Wusa, you can also use an Emma in that spot, which is a water at 4. Luis would probably work in that spot as well and give you a 44 HP lead. I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Infinity Kingdom. Infinity Kingdom is a cartoon-style, massive multiplayer online strategy game. Guys, you can see some of my own gameplay right behind me right now. This is a game that I have been playing for more than a month and a game that I've come to truly enjoy. So the premise of Infinity Kingdoms is that alchemists are summoning immortals, which are famous figures throughout history. So myself personally, I've always been a huge fan of the Arthurian legends, and I have got King Arthur, and most importantly, I've got Merlin, who's actually my strongest immortal. You guys can see a siege going on behind me right now. This is from the Wishing Well, but this is only one of many different forms of gameplay. Now, another cool thing about Infinity Kingdoms is that we have, guess what? Dragons. Oh man, dragons are actually really awesome. First of all, the animations are insane. The dragons take part in each of the sieges and the various other fights that you are undertaking. So the dragons are basically part of your army. You will have 4 immortals to lead your army in each attack, and a dragon, and then you can have multiple formations, which means that you can run multiple attacks at once. Now, speaking of the immortals, and speaking of my favorite Merlin, that's that guy right behind me. Merlin is definitely my strongest immortal. However, I did recently summon Gilgamesh, who is hands down the strongest holy hero in the game. Haven't gotten him fully developed yet, but I can't wait to actually see how good he's gonna be. Now, speaking of Gilgamesh, guys, I did a more in-depth video on Infinity Kingdoms. There's gonna be a link to that in the video description below, and you can watch me summon Gilgamesh live in that video. Well, not really live, because it's recorded, but you can watch me summon Gilgamesh in that video. Now, as I mentioned, there are many different fighting modes in Infinity Kingdom. Another mode that you can see right behind me is Arena. Guys, there is so much to do in the game, but there is an awesome trainer and an awesome menu system that help you learn the game and make it easy and just so much fun to play. Guys, I have really been enjoying my time playing Infinity Kingdom. I hope you guys will give it a shot. Hope you guys will enjoy it. Maybe I'll see you in my alliance. And if you do give it a shot, remember to use the coupon code Xennial because it gets you free summons. What more could you want? Okay, next up we're going to be doing the rescue stage. Now, again, LD4 with the Wadam here. The Belinus and the Charlotte, even though they're Nat 5s, I will tell you they're very replaceable. All you really need is 2 opposite attribute or element neutral CC units. The idea is to make sure that enemy gets as few turns as possible and that our monster that we're taking to the end, usually a Colleen or something, is as protected as possible. Wadam is the best for rescue stage. I'm sorry guys, I've got him. If you don't have Wadam, obviously that unit cannot be revived, so this is not a level where Nana works. By the way, Nana is amazing in all of these levels. I don't normally use her in most of them, but she is absolutely amazing because of the constant revives. Now, you can't use the revives here, so another alternative would be to use something like a Commune, which will give a constant shield on that unit. And then preferably paired with, maybe instead of the Fran, which is kind of trying to kill the waves faster, pair it with something that's going to offer more consistent immunity and sustain, like a Wusa, an Emma, a Luis, something like that. So, you could also try using a Triana in the spot of the Wadam because Triana gives you that death prevention as well. Now, I already showed the Belinus stats, so we'll just flash those real quick. The Fran, I mean, these are nice overall stats, but I think most of you would agree this is not exactly endgame Fran. She's actually, I used to run my Frans amazingly well, and in the current meta, she's not used as often, and when she is used, she doesn't need to be that tanky. So, there is the Fran. Here is the Charlotte. She's literally built for TOA. So again, high rune quality on my account, but I think these stats are generally achievable for most people, especially if you just drop some of the attack or some of the HP off. And then here's the Wadam, just a very standard build for Wadam. We've got, 48k HP, some good defense, and a resistance build. Now, as this stage finishes, this would probably be a good time to point out that even though a Nana would not protect the Colleen, In this particular instance, Nana would give you AoE defense break and would protect all of your other units. So if, for example, you did not have the Belinus, but you had everything else in this team, you could run Nana in place of the Belinus, and then like where my Fran was getting in trouble there, obviously wouldn't have died with the Huadam. So let's say, actually a better example would be you don't have the Huadam, you're using the Kamoon, and you don't have the Belinus. You could try using the Nana, which would help not protect the Colleen, but it would protect all the rest of your units to ensure that nothing died that would end the level other than the Colleen. Now, one other thing you may have noticed is that all of these units were above 206 speed. Guys, I apologize. I tried to look up over and over what the actual minimum speed is for Labyrinth levels. I could not find the data mine stats. I think there's a Google sheet out there somewhere, but I just couldn't find the right search terms. From what I remember, you need 206 speed. Now, I tested a monster at 206 combat speed and got outsped. So I don't know if it is 206 combat speed or maybe it changes by stage, but when I rune everything at 206 with a max speed tower, they all take turns first. Now, there is a trick to get around that. And that trick is to make sure that you have a Vertihile in your team. As long as the Vertihile is at 206 speed, the rest of your team will take turns because he'll give you a 40% attack bar boost. He works off a passive, so you don't have to worry about cool time. Speaking of cool time, this is the cool time level. So once again, we do have an Iris here. The rest of these are all very common monsters. I think this is probably going to be one of the best teams for most people because this is all of these monsters. All of you guys have them built in Rune because these are farming monsters, or Rauk was in the past. The Iris, I do think, is replaceable. Now, I haven't tested this team yet. So obviously, Iris serves the same role as she did in when I talked about previous teams. She provides additional sustain, additional CC, and then just kind of like she provides additional sustain, additional CC, and then she gives you that added strip ability. But I don't necessarily think that's necessary here. So one thing you'll notice in all of these teams, and I'll start showing the stats as I'm talking, is that I try to do a mixture of high offense with dirt protection. So when the AI screws up, I've got something in there that's going to give me a backstop so I don't wind up getting fails, even though realistically a fail here and there is not that big of a deal, considering that we're just, it's Labyrinth. It comes around once every 2 weeks. But generally speaking, these teams don't fail because I usually run some sort of sustain or strip or CC. In most cases, that's Iris. I think in this case, the Riley will work as well. So I haven't tried this yet. We're going to try it now right on stream. Well, this is not a stream, this is a recorded video, but you guys know what I mean. We're going to try this now right on video. It's a good shout out, by the way. Guys, I'm back to a stream schedule. Make sure you check our Discord. There's actually a link to my Discord server in the video description below. Check the Discord server and you'll see the stream schedule. I'm back to streaming twice a week on a schedule posted a month in advance. Anyway, you saw the stats for these monsters. Obviously, the Vertihile rune's actually not that impressive. So the Vertihile is just in leftover violent runes because I had to make sure that he would get over that 206 speed. The Ikarus have my farming runes, but the way my farming teams are built, the Ikaru is also not like just crazy impressive. The way my farming teams are built, actually the Verd has crazy stats, but we're not using that Verd here. And then the Riley is just in a generic Riley build. So why does Riley work here in place of Iris? Because Riley gives me the attack buff, which will help me clear the waves faster, so there's less worry about dirt protection. All of my Ikarus, or well, both of my Ikarus and the Riley are all super tanky, so like even when I do take some hits here, the Riley is able to heal me back up. And then when I get the team up with the Riley, I get that skill 1 heal, which helps a lot. Now, Riley is a free-to-play monster. Everybody should really have the Riley built anyway, but if for any reason you don't, you could try Lulu in Riley's place. You would get more cleanse and more immunity, but the lack of the attack buff might cause a problem, especially if the rune quality is not real high. So that would be my second thought, would be to try a Lulu there. Now, what's the basic Theorycraft concept behind this team? Well, all of these monsters are really slow because they're farming monsters, so that's why we're using this Vertihile right here. And then, because this is cool time up, we need monsters that operate on a low cooldown to begin with and team up. So normally you would use twins here, would be a great thing, but the twins pretty much, unless you have Martina, the twins have to be manualed. By using the Ikaru and the Rauk, we're able to go on auto. Now, why a Rauk instead of 3 Ikaru? For that elemental diversity, so we don't get tripped up if a wave happens to be all wind, because the 3 Ikaru are not going to be able to do enough damage. So you could, if you're actually looking ahead to which units are coming, or if you know the stages really well, you could swap the Rauk for another Ikaru, you could swap the Ikaru for another Rauk to gain benefit advantage. But this just gives us kind of like a nice balance. Now, as you guys saw, it looked like the Vertihile came close to dying a couple of times. He was the only one really at risk there. That was using the Riley. If you have the Iris, it never comes close to failing at all. So it looks like the Riley will work. The Iris still is going to work better. So I would, probably the Iris might be a little bit slower. I'm not sure. You don't get the attack buff, but you do get more CC in general with the Despair Stuns and everything. So I think the Iris team might be a little bit slower, but a little bit more stable. Either way, both teams look like they work, and we're going to move on to the next stage. Okay, next up we have the Explode stage. Now, you guys can see I do have 2 premium Nat 5s here. This stage is a little bit trickier, I'm not gonna lie. Generally speaking, if you're trying to auto, you want something that'll revive on the passive just to reduce the option for derping. So, in a previous version of this team, I actually ran this, yeah, super free to play here, right? LD5, but if for some reason, I know there's actually a couple of viewers of the channel who have Beelzebub, so I'm gonna show this to you guys. The way this team works is that when the Rauks team up with the Bub and kill something, he revives whatever's dead. If the Bub is the one that died to the bomb, then he revives himself when another one of your Rauks die. This team was like 99% for me. It was just a funny gimmick team, and it worked. But the reality is that Nana is much, much better, because on the bomb stage, you'll always have something killed on the enemy side. Nana starts with 1 orb to begin with, and then you're always going to kill something on the enemy side before anything dies to the bomb on your side. So the Nana is just like a cheat code for this stage. If you've got Nana, just run Nana plus 4 offensive units. Now in this case, we're running that same Vertihile to give me turn 1 because my Rauks are slow. We're running 2 Rauks, and we're running the Carlos just because he's fun. Totally not necessary here. Again, any nuker should work in his spot. You could also use just like an attack buffer in his spot, along with like a couple of Rauks and a third nuker here, if your monsters are fast enough. Honestly, if you've got Nana, the rest of this doesn't matter all that much. Now, if you don't have the Nana, you want to look for some sort of revivers that directly revive. So you're going to see in this deck right here, this was a very old deck for me. I used the Amarna. This deck failed a lot. Why? Because Amarna also cleanses. He's an LD4. I know a lot of you don't have him, but the point here is that he also cleanses on his revive, and so that makes him less effective because his cooldown's not always up. Instead, focus on using a 3-star reviver like a Michelle, and then you need a secondary reviver because your reviver could wind up getting bombed. So the only free-to-play, completely free-to-play reviver I can think of off the top of my head is Michelle, but there are quite a few other ones. So it could be a Vanessa, it could be an Iona, it could be a Tyrannus, it could be an Eladriel. Again, just because you're free-to-play doesn't mean you have no Nat 5s and no Nat 4s. So as long as you have 2 revivers, try to find direct revivers. So Amarna is not great for this level, and Tyrannus is also not great for this level. Iona, Michelle, and Vanessa, those are probably the 3 best for this level, followed by Eladriel. Now, Iona and Michelle, they're both the Picayune Priests, and all of them have the same skill 1, which scales damage to their skill 1 scales damage to their max HP. So if you put them on crit rate builds with high HP, they're going to have the benefit of both tanking for you and chipping in a little extra damage. And then basically you want to run your two revivers with 1 more probably sustain unit and 2 high damage, preferably AoE CC units. So something like Poseidon and Belenus are great together. You see me use them in a lot of teams because Poseidon can't glance. Belenus gives you AoE defense break with high damage. If you don't have one of those 2, again, the same monsters I talked about before. So Rika, Charlotte, Tyron, Annabelle actually can work in this role as well because she gives you cleanse and AoE defense breaks and slows. Just anything that gives you like a little bit of CC, preferably attack bar manipulation, secondarily slows and stuns. So in the case of Annabelle, try and put her on Despair for this purpose, along with your double revivers and then getting in that extra bit of sustain. If you're using Annabelle, she can count as your extra sustain, and you can run 2 more AoE units, 1 CC, preferably both CC, but if you only have 1 CC and 1 damage dealer. Now, I think it's pretty straightforward. You guys can see, obviously, with the Nana, there's going to be absolutely no risk of a fail here. I'm not going to run this level all the way through. Obviously, I've only got 5 lanterns, and we're covering, I think, 7 stages. So we'll run this level through a couple of waves, just so you can see right there, Nana revived the Rauk. We still have 2 orbs. We're in absolutely no risk whatsoever. Again, Carlos is here just basically as a gimmick. He's really probably not even the best option. He's just here because I was looking for a way to use him. But any nuker will work in his spot. AoE nuke would be better. So Poseidon, Belenus, Rika, all those same monsters again would work better than the Carlos in this spot. All right, next up we have got the time limit. Now, this is the fastest team I've ever come up with for time limit, but it is by no means necessary that you have an Iris. So the team that I used for the longest time did not use either Galleon or Iris. The core of this team is basically just the Bale, Fran, and Rauk. So what you could do, since all 4 of these are free to play, swap the Iris out for a Fran. You can also swap the Iris out for a Nana. Now, I haven't tried swapping the Iris out for a Nana before. Obviously, I've run the Fran version, so we're going to go ahead and run this. We'll do it on fast forward because it's 3 minutes. So before we jump in, let me just real quick show you the stats. The Galleon, really strong offensive build, obviously squishy AF, but lots and lots of damage. Belager is my BJR5 Belager. He is a very strong Belager, obviously. However, keep in mind, this team has actually gotten me to wave 20 once. I've only been running the team with I've only been running this exact team for the last 2 labyrinths, so I've run it like 5 or 6 times. I've made it to wave 20 once. I've always made it to at least wave 18. If you can't match the overall runes stats and quality here, then maybe you get to wave 16, 17. It doesn't matter because that's still hell range, and the first 15 waves will just melt like butter with this team, unless you just happen to get some really bad RNG, or there is one of these I think that has Halfuses, which is why I actually run the Iris. So we're going to pretend like we don't have the Iris. We're going to test it with the Nana. If you don't have the Nana, you can also just run a Fran in that spot. But I'm actually kind of curious myself how far the Nana will take us. I haven't tried this version before. One thing that I will note with this team, it is really important to put the Rauk on Violent. So the basic concept of the team, obviously, is Rauk can clear the waves as long as he gets the kills. And so if he does miss a defense break or something, the Violent can speed that up for you quite a bit. And then obviously the more Rauk goes, the more he turn cycles your units. The more Verd goes, the more he turn cycles your units, etc. So cleared wave 17 with the Nana version. The Iris version usually does go a little bit further. I'm sure that has to do with the fact that the Iris is just putting out a little bit more damage, and also the Despair stuns, making sure the enemies don't take turns. But both teams seem to be about the same to me. When I used Fran in this team, I also made it to right around wave 17, 18, 19, so all 3 versions of the team pretty much the exact same. Alright, so this brings us to the final stage, which is the speed limit stage. If you don't have Leo, this is often one of the hardest stages. Leo is obviously a cheat code for this stage, because if you don't have him, you're going to have to survive. Now, couple of things. If you don't have Leo, again, Nana is going to be a really good option here because she can help give you a little bit of dirt protection, help keep you alive. Wusa is also going to be a really good option here. Obviously, thick shields, sustain, some additional damage, and so forth. Luis, another good option, serves a very similar role to Wusa, doesn't do the damage, but does more overall healing and also gives you the HP lead. Xingzhe, the Wind Monkey King, also another really good option. Now, this is the team I'm running right now. Honestly, as long as you're running Leo, you run Leo and then something that gives you a little bit of passive heal and cleanse like the Tetra, which is not exactly free to play, but it's a 4-star, elemental 4-star. And the other 3 monsters almost don't even matter. It's really just a question of trying to find what's going to kill the fastest at that point. The fact that I have 3 water monsters here, probably not ideal, but the Rika does kill fast, and the Meihu Wang I have in here just because I was playing around and having fun.
2 hours later.
If you're actually, that's what we're going to do for this test. If you are like me and your Sath is built for the Dot team, doesn't matter because this is the speed limit stage. All the unit speeds are limited. And then I think we want to finish off the team actually by changing the Michelle for Lulu and doing it manual. Guys, this is an epic fail. I've actually, I finished recording this video twice and then I audited out the teams that I built and they both failed. I am almost positive that the auto team in my Labyrinth video from last year, that the team in my Labyrinth video from last year was able to auto. However, one little issue is these guys just got buffed into Berserk mode, and they are doing an insane amount of damage. And so what's happening when I auto these teams that I'm constructing and then finishing out the video is that these guys in particular, they're just basically one-shotting, like, not quite one-shotting, but they're doing like 80% of my entire team, and they're lapping me, and with their, anyway. What I'm gonna say is that the team that I built, the team that I showed in my first Labyrinth video, as well as the team that you're looking at right now, both of these teams should work on manual. If you're gonna auto, I know my Leo team works. I know pretty much all Leo teams work. But without the Leo, I actually, unfortunately, don't have a team that's going to work, at least for these Barbarian King levels. Now, there should be, this team that we have right here should work in a lot of the other levels, but the Barbarian King level in particular, with the Berserk that they're doing right now, or the amount of damage that they're getting from the Berserk, it's just, it's kind of running me over. So let's see if we can go ahead and do this. And we'll pass through this this stage on auto, so you can see we get this up. Also, again, really helpful if you have will runes on these monsters so that you don't wind up getting CC'd at the start. Now, right here, again, it would have been really helpful if I did have the will runes on the Vigor. With him getting into Berserk mode as well, we definitely want to make sure we get as much stunned as we can. And once it all gets stunned, we should be okay. We'll go ahead and cleanse off the debuffs over there. And this is where basically the team is having trouble on auto, because if the Thrain doesn't do his thing exactly as he should right there, you're in trouble. Now, I was using the Thrain here, but it would be the same thing with a Rika team as well. If Rika derps, whatever, I mean, you can see, like, through crit resist, that was 50% damage right there. And then obviously with the additional debuffs from the Helena and the other Hraesvelg, this team was running into trouble when we didn't have it, when we weren't manualing it, basically. You probably auto through the first couple of stages, or you could auto through the first stage, either way. The thing is, for the second stage, you need to come into the final stage with your cooldowns lined up. And then once we get to here, now we can actually auto the rest of the way out, because we've got control over the team. So anyway, on that note, guys, that is it for today's video. As always, hope you found the video useful. I appreciate you guys watching. Please remember, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, smash the comment button, and we'll see you on the next video.